Nobody wakes up in the morning and determines on a certain day that they want to find a drug of choice and become addicted to it. That doesn't happen. What normally happens is they become familiar with it through either friends or family, that they see it the way they see it, and then once it's taken place, then we need to, as a society, reach out and help out.
Welcome everyone to another episode on our Coffee with Kuda. Today I am excited to be talking with our MLA. Mike, he's coming from a long history of working with the population actually, and he himself used to be a firefighter, and you can only imagine the kind of people they come across. Mike, how are you?
I am doing well, thank you.
Excellent. I am excited to have you here. Just real quickly, if you can give us a brief story about yourself before you became an MLA.
Well, I spent 32 years in the fire service here in Surrey.
Okay.
Grew up in Surrey. And then there was a point in time at the end of my career where I got involved with Surrey's residential recovery programs as the city's chief fire prevention officer. And I saw some of the things that needed to be done.
Okay.
I saw some of the things that needed to be changed. So I did the next best thing. I retired early, ran as a city councillor, and was successful in 2014. And from that point, during that 4-year time, we were actually able to make some changes, some really good changes to start addressing the residential recovery programs that are out there for people so they can get themselves back on track and be contributing members of society. I was not so lucky in 2018. I like to refer to it as unelected. But in 2020, there was an opportunity to run at a provincial level. In Surrey Cloverdale, and I was successful there, and now I am the MLA for Surrey Cloverdale, and now I have the ear of some of those people that are making those kinds of decisions in provincial politics.
Absolutely, and I do appreciate that because I think you've seen it firsthand, right? The recovery houses, the good ones and the bad ones. You've seen the individuals in the streets, how they can be mistreated and how the stigma is so heavily on that community. So I hope that having you up there can help us with our work to destigmatize addiction. Your current stance on opioid epidemic, what do you think? Just personal opinion.
Oh, it's a travesty and a tragedy. It hits so many people that are out there. A number of years ago when the crisis was identified in 2016,
yes,
especially here in Surrey, I mean, we were concentrating on 135A.
Correct.
Just around the corner from City Hall, just down the street from Fire Hall number 2, where I spent probably 10 years working. And you could see what was the beginnings of it. You could see how that was the part that was there. And now it's not like that. In 2016, 2017, that 135A strip that was it was just full of trouble, and people needed the help to get out of there. But what we're also seeing was a trend that it just wasn't there. A heat map was produced of Surrey to show where all the overdose deaths were. And while there was a concentration there in Whalley, there was also, it was popping up in neighborhoods. It was popping up in places where, people would say, oh, not in my neighborhood. Right. But it was there. And when you ask me what's my opinion, my opinion is that this pandemic took it to the next level. The people that I talked to that were in the recovery business, they raised some flags and said, this is what we're going to see. And at the beginning there was a drop, but after that the curve went up, and people started manufacturing it in an unsafe way. The drug that was there, it became an unsafe supply that was out there because, while everything else is shut down at the borders and how people come in and out, that supply was shut down, so somebody else had to manufacture it, and they were not the chemists that we would think. And that's where we got, and that's where we are today. And I'm confident that, from a government point of view, that we have the ability to do something about this.
Absolutely.
And I think that the best way to deal with it right at the beginning is to educate and reach out and help.
135A right now, it's absolutely clean, no more tents. Do you think that was successful in reducing the number of overdoses?
Well, I was part of city council when that was there.
Okay.
I was sitting at the table when we were talking about it, how we were going to do it. We had the subject matter experts that were at the table. Fraser Health was there. You had the housing people that were there. Your social services were there. The RCMP were obviously there. And we were taking a look at some of the best practices that have happened elsewhere to try to solve these problems that were there, because there was an awful lot of criminal activity that was going on there. There was an awful lot of violence that was taking place there, along with the overdoses that were taking place. We did it with the intent that we can't take that group of people and move them a great distance, because that is their community. And that's why we put the temporary housing into the areas that were there, and then we built in services that were there. And then there was a supervised consumption site that was put there as well. Did it increase or decrease the overdose deaths or overdoses themselves? I don't have those numbers,
Right, yeah.
but it became a safer place.
If you can just help educate people why the safe consumption site is positive.
Yeah, I mean, I want to take a step backwards, because it was called a supervised consumption site as
Right.
opposed to safe.
Right.
Because I don't really want to use the word safe when you're talking about using illegal drugs. But it was supervised. There was somebody there in case you overdosed to be able to do that. And I have to tell you that when it first came, I was hesitant. Because I was coming from working with people that were working in the business of allowing you to recover and to get back in there, and some of it was abstinence based. When I saw that, I was hesitant. But when I started working with Fraser Health, and it was Dr. Victoria Lee, and we sat shoulder to shoulder, and we had our back and forth about certain things. When we started seeing supervised consumption working in conjunction with recovery, I was a big fan. And that's when everything started changing. It just wasn't catering to the person that was going in there to get their next fix. There was also the ability to have a conversation.
If I can just get your input on the temporary housing, as well as the effect they had on making 135A safer.
Well, the temporary housing was put there because it just gives those people that were on 135A one less thing that they have to worry about. When you have the front room that was there as well, where people had a temporary shelter, and then they had to go back out onto the street during the day. There was no place for them to be all day long. And it's when you have housing, then you don't have to worry about what happens at night. You don't have to worry about what happens in the morning. In the summertime, when it's hot out, you've got a place where it's cooler. In this wintertime, when it's cold, you got a place that's warmer. And we know how much it rains here. And when it rains, you can stay dry. So that was a very important part of 135A to get it done.
Yes.
And the other part of the temporary housing and the cluster that were done there was supportive services were embedded inside of there as well.
Right,
So
right.
I think there was a very good uptake of what was there. The majority of the people on 135A took up the housing that was there. Not 100%. I think if we were to ever expect 100%, we're in a different planet. But we got the majority of the people that were there and got them stabilized. And of course, now the next step is for the city and the province to start working towards more permanent forms of housing.
Absolutely, yeah. And actually talking about that, I think there are 3 or so that are coming up, which are being built. And I think that was an impressive step to take after the temporary housing.
Yeah, and on top of that, just recently, just down the street, the old Travel Lodge, which is got 30 units that are inside of there, were bought by the province to provide proper housing for people, and then embed services into there as well.
Some people, before they fall into drug addiction, they came through the gangs. I just want to know if you can tell us a little bit about your understanding of the current gang violence and how we can prevent it?
Yeah, I was part of the mayor's task force that was put together to take a look at what was going on here in Surrey and through the school system that was there as well. And you know, when you say the gang issues that are in Surrey, I like to think of it as it's Metro Vancouver. You
Metro
know,
Vancouver, right,
the
yes.
gangsters don't know borders. They don't know that when you go across 120th, I'm now in Delta. You know, so when we take a look at what's going on throughout all of Metro Vancouver, whether it's Coquitlam, Surrey, you know, Delta, Richmond, Vancouver, the gang war that's there is spread out all the way through there.
Right.
And so now, what can we do here in Surrey? And you've identified that it's a tough life to get out of. But you have to identify those kids at an early age, and I'm happy that, you know, we've still got the wraparound program here in Surrey, with you know, that's their kind of end gang life. They're the ones that are embedded into the schools to take a look at what's there. I know that they've also done a little bit of work to find out, you know, doing the reverse engineering, if you may. You know, like you've got this person that's just graduated high school and he's been arrested. So what high school did he come from, and what elementary school did they come from, and why is it that was the route that was there? And, you know, I can't not stop believing that when you have somebody that's, you know, in those impressionable years, you know, whether it's 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, it goes that far back, that if they don't have something to do,
Yes.
then that's when they become problematic. And in some areas of our city, you know, the only place that they've got to hang out is a convenience store.
Right.
And that's where the trouble starts from. You know, they don't have a soccer field, or they don't have a playground, or they don't have after school programs. You know, they don't have those kind of things. You know, when I say after school programs, I have to smile because I'm very familiar with across the street with
Yes.
Mackey's Place and
Mackey's
Bobby Ray. And I've been over there and cooked for those kids that are there. So I know what after school programs mean to keep somebody active. So if we're going to, and, you know, and the gang problem's been around for
Exactly.
forever. I mean, you know, you go back to the turn of the century, last century, you know, and how people glorify in movies, you know, the stuff that's there. If we're going to really make a difference, we have to think about what our investment is today and what's going to happen 20 years from now. It's almost like forestry, you know. When's the best time to plant a tree? 25 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today.
Right. The reason why I was touching on that is throughout my interviews in the youth group that I work with, I'm realizing that when you look at the social determinants of health, some risk factors that come out from a person who ends up in gang and a person who ends up as a drug addict, they're usually the same. It just so happens that one person ended up in a gang and stayed in a gang. When I ask what could we have done to prevent you from being either in addiction or being in a gang, they say I needed guidance at 9, 10, 11. At 15, I was almost the person I was going to end up as. My question to you is it possible, as a personal opinion, to have more bodies in elementary schools, such as mentors or counselors who go and target those guys who fall under those vulnerable categories?
I don't know whether we have the capacity to put more of those people in a classroom, but if we did, then that would be a smart thing to do. I think the other thing we have to do is we have to provide the guidance and education to the teachers, so that they can see it, and if they can recognize that, then that's when maybe we put the resources, rather than, you know, take one mentor and put it in every single classroom that's out there, and, you know, because our school population is monstrous, right? It might serve us better to have that kind of training for the staff that are working there to recognize that, because I think you will find out that person that's 15 years old was probably recognized by a teacher when they were 8, when they were 9, when they were 10. You know, the troublemaker mentality is pretty easy to spot, but it's just something that seems to just fall through a crack. And by the time it's fallen through that crack at the age of 15, as you said, it's done.
Right,
you know,
right.
that marathon is almost ran.
Absolutely. Okay, so educating the teachers is more feasible than maybe aiding the counselors in the schools.
I think so. I mean, whether or not it's the gang life or whether or not it's the addiction end of things. When I think about my grandson, he's 3.5 years old, and doesn't care about anything other than kicking a soccer ball or hitting a baseball. There'll be a time in his life over the next 5 years where we'll be able to educate it and make certain impressions as to right and wrong,
Right.
and making choices. An 8-year-old is not smart enough to make a lot of adult choices.
Absolutely.
And so we as adults have to provide them with that guidance at that time to be able to do that. And you know what? We're in a day and age where it's easy for me to say that, and it's hard for people to do that, because some families, mom and dad are working, and after school care is, in front of a laptop playing games or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
And so the ability to monitor what they're doing with other kids makes it very difficult.
But from the statistics I was just looking at on gov.bc.ca, they say that overdose deaths were in private residences, 72%. It's about 80% now. My question to you is, because these are happening in private residences, what kind of strategies are possible to support and prevent these?
That's a good question. I can tell you, just by way of background, Minister Malcolmson from Mental Health and Addictions and I have had very in-depth conversations about these things that are there. I explained where I came from Surrey, and we talked about it earlier about how 135A, the strip, that part was where most of it was happening, and now it's surfacing itself elsewhere in the city.
Right.
And now you're saying 72 to 80% of the overdose deaths are in just a general residence. Yeah, and I think for me personally, a lot of us will have first aid kits in our home.
Yeah.
And we have them, because you cut your finger while you're making dinner or something else like that, and you run to a drawer and you grab a Band-Aid and you put it on. I think we need to add something to that kit.
Naloxone kit.
We have to have a naloxone kit that's there, so that if somebody does call out, whether it's not somebody from your house or the neighbor that you know very well, that you have a first aid kit that's there. I think everybody's experienced where somebody's screaming for help next door, and you grab your first aid kit and you go over there. I think that's part of what's there. But before that happens, we have to break down that big door of stigma, where people feel that they have to be alone to use this for whatever reason. I can't explain the why. It's the stigma. If you're going to do this, don't do it alone. And if the other person is there, they can save your life. If that's what you feel, that's the necessary part of what you're going through. And other than the education part that starts at 8, 9, and 10, that says this is a bad choice. Yeah. I think that the only other choice is to make sure that we have the tools to reverse it.
One point that brought up was 55% were employed in the trades and transport industry. My question is, do these industries attract the people, or are these people attracted by the industries?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a well-phrased question. Good on you. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Because for some people, it's what they like to do and what they're good at doing. But when you think about if you're combining those addictions with something like that, I think it's been part of what's been in society for years. Right. When you think about the trades and the camps people work in, you associate drug and alcohol use in that camp. You also associate with it big money. And one thing comes with big money, temptation. And you'll find there's a certain part of that population, I guess the number's 55%, that likes to take the big money and apply it this way. But it tells me 45% of the people take that trade and occupation and they actually, buy a house or townhouse or condo and they invest it and they do other things that are there. So I'm not sure which one comes first, but I know that those kinds of jobs, they tend to be higher paying jobs that are out there that allows that person to do whatever they want to do with their lifestyle that they've chosen at that time.
I read here 85% deaths are among 15 to 29-year-olds. And they detected fentanyl, as we were talking about the drug that is being created in the labs. Should we teach substance misuse from a younger age?
Oh yeah, man. I don't know what the age is. You know, there's, it is, we teach, you know, at an early age, you know, going back to my fire service years, we teach kids at an early age, if their clothes catch on fire, you stop, drop, and roll.
Okay.
And it's just a given that that's what these kids do. When you have a grade 1 class, and you think about the age that they're, when that fire alarm bell goes off, they've been practicing all the time. They walk to that door, they single file, they find a place to meet, and away they go.
Right.
So we can teach fire safety. We can teach that at a young age. Why can't we teach those kids that this is a poor choice? This is the wrong choice. And when it's given there, we teach kids at a young age that if they walk into the room and they see a lighter or they see a pack of matches, that should be not played with.
Yes.
Why can we not do it the other way? If you happen to be there, and if your parents or whoever's watching you has an illegal drug or something that's there, you should be taught, don't touch that. In the same way. Yeah. So how early can we do it? I think the earlier that we start recognizing it in society. You know, what's more important, learning that 4 times 4 is 16, or fentanyl is a very bad thing for you, and it has the ability to take you away.
I know you have to run, and I hope that at some point we do sit and talk again, because a lot of questions are asked here. But one of the things that I wanted to ask that I find more important is, what are your thoughts about the right to live at risk?
Oh, well, you have it. You do have it. You know, I can tell you that is my last job within the fire service. We dealt with a lot of people that had mental health issues, and they lived in a house, and you know, they were hoarders.
Yes.
And I remember meeting with this person who literally, when you open up the door, all you saw were newspapers. Mm-hmm. And they actually literally crawled up, and they had a space of about 2 feet between the top of the newspapers and the ceiling.
Right.
And that's how they moved around there. Was the house unsafe? No. Was the house a fire hazard? No different than my house. But that was their right to live that way. If they were living in a way that was going to affect their neighbor, if they were in a apartment or townhouse or a condo, then it's a different story, because maybe the way that they live will affect their neighbor next door. The fire extinguisher, the sprinklers don't work. So people have that right when they can make that decision. When they're not capable of making a decision that keeps them safe, then that's when you have to step in.
Perfect. Wow. Okay. I appreciate that. As we close in here, because we are focusing more on substance abuse and addiction, as well as destigmatizing the illness of addiction itself, what are your last words to someone who may end up in that situation? Well,
nobody wakes up in the morning and determines on a certain day that they want to find a drug of choice and become addicted to it. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen. What normally happens is they become familiar with it through either friends or family, that they see it the way they see it, and then once it's taken place, then we need to, as a society, reach out and help out.
Right.
We need to make sure that there are a number of things that are there. If there was one way to take an addict and allow them to recover, that would be an amazing thing, but that's not there. Yeah. Everybody has their own set of tools. Everybody has their own personality when it comes to addictions. And addictions long enough with certain substances will actually lead to those mental health problems.
Right,
So we need to get in front of that. We need to make sure that they're not cooking their brains with whatever their drug is. And we have to provide the systems that are there. We have residential recovery programs. We have industrial recovery programs. We have 12-step recovery programs. We have faith-based, non-faith-based. We have all of these tools that are out there, along with we do have a medical system that allows you to cope while you're still there, whether or not it's methadone or Suboxone that's available with those programs that are out there. We are developing more and more understanding as to what's happening out there, whether or not it's recovery coaches or more doctors that are becoming familiar with what addictions really is. So that when somebody presents themselves to their family doctor early on, that they go, oh, this is what's taking place, and this is what I can do for you. We have to break down the end of the stigma. We talk about when we talk about mental health issues. You know, we've got the Bell Day where we're breaking down the stigma of mental health. We need to do that as well with addictions. We need to make sure that we understand that person right now in that place in this day, they're doing it because they don't have another reason. And I guess it's our job as society to give them another reason.
Mike, it's been a pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Hey everyone, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. I do really appreciate it. If you can, please subscribe to our channel for more content. If you can, please join our Patreon team. The link is down below. And also you can join our GoFundMe. The link is also involved below. This will help us to bring awareness of addiction as well as destigmatize this illness. Your support is greatly appreciated and we'll create more content for you. Thank you so much.